Swan is a cool, dashing boy with supernatural powers that make him the strongest in the world. Right now, he is on a quest to save the world and is standing on top of the pyramid on Stage 0, surrounded by millions of undead zombies, skeletons, and monsters who are there to get a piece of his illegal ass. As the monsters start running towards him like the raid on Area 51, he calls his cat, Koi, to come back and then activates his elemental atomic buff. Before charging straight into the enemies and killing them like stupid NPCs, he rushes towards the center with two firing blades in his hands and wonders how many days it has been since he began the battle to protect this pyramid. Just then, the undead archers rain down a fleet of arrows at him, but he jumps up and dodges them all. He starts cutting through them all and calling out their numbers while running around lost in his thoughts. He realizes that some of the undead have combined into massive monsters, and he is now surrounded by a big group of them. With everyone in place, he sits down and activates his ultimate move, Thousand Graves, summoning massive gravestones infused with light magic and killing a lot of them. Then, he jumps down to continue his killing spree like the Gigachad he is. But Swan was not always this cool and strong. To find out how he got to this point, you will have to roll back a whole year to the time before the Fire Nation attacked. Back then, Swan was nothing but a disgusting, stupid, smelly orphan boy who lived all by himself and studied in an elite high school made over the graveyard of degenerate weebs at their dreams and 2D waifus. He thought that his life would never amount to anything great, just like everyone who doesn't watch anime and recaps. But things changed when he found out that the Egyptian prince scammer who asks for $100,000 so he can escape his country and promises that he would give you $10 billion is actually his mysterious grandfather, and he has left him 10 billion yen to spend on online games. Our poor protagonist studies at the Shermu Private Academy and lives in the boy dormitory on the campus. His parents went out to get milk and never returned, so he had to grow up on his own while working all sorts of odd jobs to support himself. He spends most of his days working part-time jobs and getting bullied by idiots who don't like his gaming addiction. One summer morning while he's working as a lifeguard and playing video games on the side, a couple of bullies walk up to him and ask him if he has seen a pink-haired beauty around. He says that he doesn't know what they are talking about, and they tell him that he should be observant as a lifeguard. Swan says that he doesn't know how to swim and he just cleans the pool. So, one of the bullies decides to be an ass and throws his cat, Wan Hoi, into the pool and tells him to go clean it. Swan immediately jumps in to save Wan Hoi but drowns alongside him. The next time he opens his eyes, he finds himself on the floor beside the pool with his friend Rancho waiting for him to wake up. He asks him if he saved him, but he says that by the time he arrived, he had already been pulled out, and the one who saved him was Ri, the sole daughter of the vice president of Godgrave Tech Company, which is one of the largest game development and electronics companies in the country. She is the richest, smartest, and most beautiful girl in the school with a line of simps always running around her ready to suck her toes. But before we move on, let us just take a moment to appreciate the fact that Rancho tells him all this while holding his girlfriend in his arms like a Rizzler and drop a like on the video, so we can get a Riz boost from Rancho the Rizzler, so we can think back on the last thing he remembers before drowning and recalls being kissed by a pink-haired beauty and becomes red in the face like ass. One night, while working as a security guard, he stumbles upon a nasty couple trying to get spicy in the graveyard beside the school campus. He asks them if he can join, but ends up scaring them off and becomes sad about losing yet another chance of losing his virginity. After cleaning up the mess behind them, he sits down next to a lamppost with his usual gaming setup from where he steals electricity to play all night long. The game, Dungeon Sentry, is Blizzard's next attempt to rob you of all your money and financial future by making it a skill-based pay-to-win multiplayer, and Swan is all about it, being the stinky, sweaty gamer he is. Swan has been playing this game every night since the day of its release and has grinded far more levels than needed to clear the endgame stages. With no caps on the levels, he now plays as a level 180 character named Gwen while wearing nothing but a vest, scarf, and underwear and a stupid helmet on his head with middle high-grade equipment. He has become an urban legend like the naked Poth of Elden Ring who can solo the level 99 Ultimate Dragon in mere seconds with his stupid stick. Everyone thinks that he is really cool, but in reality, he's just a poor, sweaty gamer with no money to spend on his favorite game. So he grinds it all night like a geek. After killing the Ultimate Dragon, he decides to check a new dungeon for mobs to farm. While looking around, he hears a pink-haired cutie running around while screaming like being chased by a stinky mushroom monster. She uses her water spell on the monster, but it doesn't do much because everyone knows grass type is stronger against water type Pokemon. Swan decides to show off his skills and jumps in with his ice and physical attacks, defeating the monster easily. After being saved, the girl walks up to him and introduces herself as a level 11 player called Ray and asks him about his gaming ID. But before he can say anything, his computer shuts down, and he looks up to see that the wiring on the lamppost is going bust. After that, One Eye looks at his dumb ass as he decides to climb up the lamppost to fix the wiring. But then, he sees the pink-haired beauty of the school reopen her room's windows in the girls' dormitory, which is on the other side of the graveyard wall. He starts staring at her like a pervert, but her friend Maki knocks him down the pole by throwing a pillow at him, thinking that he is a creepy stalker. The next morning, while cleaning the school's windows as a part-time job, he sees Ree sitting on the bench with her roommate while playing his favorite game on her laptop. He takes a peek at the screen and realizes that she is the person behind the level 11 Ray he saved last night and becomes really excited for the first time in his life. It's a real cute girl behind an in-game friend instead of a nasty fat middle-aged man. Just then, Rancho catches him glaring at Ree like a creeper and tells him that falling in love is fine, but he should know that she is someone even above the stars, as everyone in the school idealizes her, so he should be careful with what he aims for. Later that afternoon, while playing the game in his dorm room, he receives a friend request from Ree and becomes really excited with that beta male sim energy. After that, for the next several months, they play the game together and become really good friends in-game. But one day, Ray says that she wonders what he looks like in real life, and Sujin wonders that it's not possible for them to become friends in real life as well because he's always busy with his stupid part-time jobs, and he is a poor student with no family, and they practically live in different worlds. He wishes for these days to continue forever where he gets to spend time with her in-game, but it all changes one day when the Fire Nation attacks. One night, all the players in the game receive a notification saying that this game, Dungeon Century, will be discontinued. Swan becomes really depressed, and the next morning, he wanders around the school aimlessly as he feels like his life has ended with the game servers shutting down. His adventures with RI will come to an end, and he will return to being the lonely loser he always was. He spends his day working his part-time jobs and slaving away in depression like all of you in the comments section until night falls. On the other hand, Vice President Yuki sits down with his daughter R and gives her a special box. He tells her to keep it safe, and if something bad were to happen, he wants her to follow the instructions inside the box. Ria asks what he meant by that, and he says that it's just a precautionary measure and nothing is going to happen. He then explains that Dungeon Century has finished its purpose as a prototype, and a new game that will change this world is about to start. Then he turns around and says that she must be sad because she finally found a friend who she liked in the game, and Ria becomes red like a tomato. After that, her father walks out and goes to his office to attend a couple of meetings regarding the announcement of the new game. Later that night, Ria logs into the game and waits for Gwen to come online as well. While sitting in the tavern, she hears about a hidden item in the game called Evening Songflower, which can grant anyone's wish. The player is talking about it as a joke, wondering if they could stop the devs from shutting down the servers if they found it and laugh it off. Sometime later, Sujin hurries to his lamppost and logs into the game to meet Ray. She says that there's only a week left before the servers would be shut down, so she wants to spend as much time as she can adventuring around with him. Sujin takes a dose of copium and thinks that to her, he is just another online friend in one of the games she plays, and that's all he is to her. Once the game ends, he won't be able to meet her like this ever again, and he feels sad. They walk around and talk about the game, and before logging out, Ria tells him about the Evening Songflower and says that she wants to find it before the game ends, no matter what. Being the sweaty-ass gamer simp he is, Sujin says that he would find it with her, and they make a promise to do it before the server shuts down. Meanwhile, the GGT announces the launch of the next big online MMO game called Gravebuster. The players will be grave robbers who will hunt down various treasures hidden on each stage, and to suck their souls out, the game will have a new system where your financial strength will be your ultimate strength as well, which basically means it's capitalism, and if you're poor, then good luck. The more money a player spends on the game, the stronger they become. Besides that, all the players who register to play will get a free special console called Kbe, which is specifically designed to play Gravebuster. Just like that, a week passes by, and the day comes when Dungeon Century celebrates its grand finale event. Rhea logs in and waits for Gwen to come and help her find the evening song Flower, but the clock keeps ticking, and he doesn't come. On the other hand, Sujin spends his whole day working odd jobs and feeling depressed. Meanwhile, Old Man Yuki sits in his office watching his game come to an end in preparation for the masterpiece of his life, Game Buster, to take over. All the items and currency from Dungeon Century will be transferable to Game Buster, so the old players would already have an edge over newcomers. But the thing that Yuki is hoping for is for someone to find the hidden item before the servers shut down. Rhea walks around in the field of song flowers and starts looking around for the hidden item on her own. Then, a monster-like player goes berserk and ruins the whole event by killing other players and robbing all their equipment. They soon arrive on the song flower field and attack Rhea as well. She tries to fight back, but the enemy's avatar turns into a tentacle monster, and we all know what that means for anime girls. Meanwhile, Sujin is running late due to a minor accident on his way, but eventually gets his ass in front of his computer and logs in. He goes to the tavern to find Ri, but the place is destroyed, and from a recorded message, he finds out that Ri went ahead on her own to find the flower. He runs through the destroyed town and eventually arrives on the song flower field and finds Rhea laying on the floor with all her fancy gear gone. He picks her up in his arms and looks down sadly with tears in his eyes as she apologizes for not being able to find the flower for him while holding a bent and broken one in her hands. Sujin's tears fall on the flower, and suddenly it starts shining and blooms into an evening song flower. They both look at it in awe, but then the tentacle monster grabs Rei and rips a hole through her chest, making her the first chibi member of the Dead Donut Gang. Meanwhile, Sujin falls down with the evening song flower in his hands as the servers shut down, and the game comes to an end forever. On the other hand, a red-haired hottie walks inside the GGT building and enters Old Man Yuki's room. She sits down on his table with a gun pointing at his bald head and says that because he's a co-worker, she would feel sad to put him down. Yuki asks her if she was pretending to be some thief who happened to be passing by and kills him, calling it lame. He further asks her if it's President Ling's idea and says that it definitely sounds like a third-grade idea that he would come up with. She then asks him if he won't tell her how to open the tomb, and he tells her to suck his ARs, and then he won't ever help grave robbers like them. With that, the girl calls out his name and refers to him as the final gravekeeper and thanks him for all his services before shooting him down. The next morning, Sujin walks towards the school with his broken bicycle and notices one running into the fog. He calls out to him and sees Ri holding the cat in her arms and petting it. He silently walks past her, but then she says that he was the one who has been protecting her in the game all this time and asks if he would allow her to thank him. He says that he doesn't deserve it because he couldn't do anything when it mattered, and he didn't even come in time as promised. She says that it's fine and asks if he would protect her in the new game, Grave Robber. He becomes really excited to hear it and says that he will and ends up breaking his cycle's handle, making her laugh at his poor clumsy ass. Later that morning, the GTC building is surrounded with police cars and barricades as they investigate the murder case of Vice President Yuki. Sujin feels extremely shocked when he finds out about this from Rancho during his class and runs towards Ria's dormitory because her father just died. He meets up with Maki at the door, and she tells him that some people from the company came earlier to pick her up as there is a lot of paperwork and arrangements to be made for the funeral, so she would be away for some time. During the funeral, people pity young Ria's fate, and rumors go around that the old man had taken a big debt as well. The murder case makes it to the big news channel, and the GGC President Ling holds a public announcement and says that they won't sit down calmly until they capture the killer, while the red-haired killer stands on the same stage behind the curtains and looks at his politically lying ass. On the other hand, Sujin looks at the news on the net, and while looking at Yuki's portrait, he gets a flashback of playing with him when he was little and says that he knows him from somewhere. A few days later, Ria calls Sujin to come visit her at her house. After exchanging greetings, she takes the purple box out and gives it to him with a letter on top of it. Sujin picks it up and starts reading and finds out that it is a letter from her father Yuki instructing her to give the box to Sujin. He opens it to see what was inside and finds a kbe inside of it. He puts his finger on the screen, and it starts an identification sequence and logs him in as Rikusujin and tells him to wait while the system starts up. They wonder why the old man would want him to have this console, and then Ria tells him that she is not actually the biological daughter of Yuki. She was adopted when she was very young and doesn't know anything about her real father. Just then, a black car drives in, and her maid comes and tells her that she has some guests. Ria excuses herself and walks out and finds two men asking her if she was Yuki's daughter. Meanwhile, the system loads up on Sujin's Kbei, and he picks it up to see what it was about. He looks at the screen and finds out that he now has 10 billion yen in his game account and thinks that it must be a mistake. Just then, a recording starts playing, and it turns out to be from Old Man Yuki, who says that he is the man who raised Ria, and he is his real grandfather as well. He then says that he might not remember it, but it's all true. And the reason why he has left him with this inheritance is that he wants him to use this money so he and Ria can live together happily ever after. Sujin starts blushing like the simp he is and starts dreaming about Ria being his wife. But then Yuki says that there is another important thing he should know as well. Ria's real parents were friends with the same goal, but the enemies got to them first and murdered them. That's why he adopted Ria as his own daughter to protect her, but now that he is gone, he wants him to use this inheritance to protect her. Just then, Sujin hears Ria scream from outside, and he sees that the two men are forcing her into the car and telling her that she must come with them to the office to settle the massive debt that her dead father has left behind. Sujin looks at that and runs downstairs and tells them to hold it right there. With that, he starts running towards them, ready to throw hands, thinking that he will win this with the power of plot armor, but gets his ass kicked by one of the guys who then walks up and beats him on the ground like some piece of trash. Seeing his pathetic ass getting beat up, Ria becomes really sad and tells them that she will go with them and do whatever they want. When the guy stops kicking him, Sujin grabs his foot and begs him to stop and says that he will pay the debt for her. He finds out that the debt is 500 million yen and starts running upstairs to get the money from his kbei, but then he finds out that in-game currency cannot be exchanged for real money. I don't know why it's a shocker for him, but he becomes surprised about the fact. Just then, he hears Sujin's voice and looks down from the window to see her being taken away in the black car as she thanks him for trying to help her despite being broke. As the car zooms out, he starts crying and thinks about Ria's smile and his time playing with her in the game and the fact that he almost got the blessings of her dead father to marry her. With a power of Sing and an intense desire to lose his virginity, he decides to chase after them on his bicycle. The men in the car say that it's good that he got a good beating and that it should have brought his delusional ass back to reality, but then they hear him racing behind them on his cycle while screaming Ria's name like a raging duck. Ria slides the window down and looks back at him. He says that he will save her no matter what, and she says that she would be waiting for him. But then the driver becomes sick of their stupid romance and hits the brakes so he can ends up getting in front of their car, and then they hit him from behind and make him brutally crash on the side of the road. Ria curls up on her seat in despair while the two men inside laugh at his stupid ha, but then a hooded guy suddenly teleports into the car and surprises all of them. The driver asks who he was, and the guy introduces himself as Silicon and uses his ability to kill them both and then crashes their car as well. Sujin walks up to him and asks who he was and what he did with Ria. Silicon says that he has a message for him and shares that Sujin Sam will be waiting for him in Gravebuster. Then he vanishes from the scene like Houdini before the car explodes. Later that night, Sujin lies down in his bed in his room and tries to activate the game console, but it doesn't work for some reason. He then falls back and thinks about everything that happened so far and wonders what this game called Gravebuster even is that Yuki created. Besides that, who even was that guy? And where did he take Ria? All these questions flood his mind, and he feels overwhelmed by them. But just then, his kbei starts shining green, and a green-haired beauty with massive plot summons on top of him. He becomes surprised and asks her who she was and why she was there, and she says that she is Twin Star and she is there because he called her as her master. He says that she has got the wrong room, but Twin Star says that she hasn't, and then teleports them both inside Gravebuster on stage 34. After getting teleported, he looks around and wonders if this was Gravebuster, and then looks at her feeling dizzy on the ground. Just then, she gets covered in smoke and transforms into two small cute creatures, and Sujin wonders if that's her real form. Meanwhile, Three other players appear on the same stage, but far away from Sujin. They get ready to loot the treasure and start exploring the place while Sujin pokes Twin Star around wondering what was going on. Just then, a massive pyramid-like creature comes out of the sand and asks who disturbed his sleep. With that, we get teleported to the game's intro scene and learn about the myth of creation long ago. An all-powerful god has created this world. After that, she gave her own life to create many other lives and became really exhausted. With everything in place, she decided to go to an eternal slumber inside the imperial tomb, and her death left behind a great power, and her name was Goddess Bango. Back at Sujin's location, the massive pyramid's appearance scares Twin Star away, and they turn into their digital versions and go inside his kbei. As they introduce themselves as the guides of this game and tell him good luck before running away, the pyramid hears about this and says that he won't let him go away, and now he will test him to see if he is worthy of becoming a Tombed Guardian. His mission is to ward off any intruders alongside him and to protect this stage from them. But then he looks down and notices Sujin walking away, saying he gives as many shits about him as you viewers give about your social life. He says that he doesn't have time for all this BS, but then the pyramid says that it must mean he doesn't care about Riku and doesn't want to save her. He says that if he doesn't pass the test, he won't be able to save her, and this makes Sujin really mad. He turns around to ask him how he knew about it. Just then a massive energy beam zooms past from behind him and goes towards the pyramid, barely keeping his smelly ass from turning into roasted pork cheeks. Thankfully, the attack misses its target and flies by the pyramid, and Sujin asks him what it was. On the other hand, we see the three players from earlier aiming at the pyramid from a distance. The hot blondie tells his younger brother and sniper, EU, that they missed but the next one will make it for sure. After that, she tells the little girl, Farron, to go on ahead and act as a distraction for the enemies. Back to Sujin, the pyramid says that the Tomb Raiders have already started attacking and he must defeat him if he wants to pass this test. Sujin says, okay, and then tells him to start already. The pyramid tells him to be prepared. After that, shoots down a green laser on the ground and summons a sexy cat girl named Shasa. She is the incarnate of the desert, and after getting summoned, she turns to the guy and asks him if he was Sujin. When he confirms the fact, she says that she has been waiting for him and jumps at him like a fox and steals his first kiss. Sujin becomes excited, but then all dies away as he starts getting a flashback cutscene and remembers an old memory from his childhood with Yuki from when he gave him his red scarf. He remembers that Yuki was really his gramps and starts feeling sentimental. Shasa says that they were able to break the seal on his memories and becomes really happy. And just then the pyramid speaks up as well and says that it's time to reveal his true form. Suddenly, the upper compartment of the pyramid opens up, and from inside Rikuyuki comes out while floating on an air tube. He introduces himself as his grandpa and says that while he had many identities in real life, his single true identity has always been that he was Sujin's gramps. Just then F uses her card summoning ability, Stip a Heart, and sends a bunch of disgusting insects towards the pyramid. Meanwhile, Foreign launches a bunch of blasts on the location using her blasting sword, and then rides one of the centipedes towards Sujin. They all think about the treasure and rewards they will earn from this stage, and say that they would be rich after this, and prepare to shoot another energy shot at the pyramid. Meanwhile, Yuki explains that he is the data that the real Yuki saved in this game before dying in real life. They all then run inside the pyramid, and Yuki takes him to the cockpit of the Guardian made specifically for this hidden stage, the Guardian Giant Yuki 34. He then prepares the giant to activate and waits for it, while Farron attacks the pyramid with a strong blasting SL attack from her sword and cuts it in half. But it turns out that in reality, the pyramid just opened up to reveal the real Guardian Giant from underground. The Guardian Giant comes out instantly, destroys a couple of centipedes, and makes Foreign scared of his big D energy. On the other hand, Rei wakes up from a nightmare where she fails to save Sujin from drowning the other day and finds herself locked in a cell with a young girl keeping watch over her. The girl throws a dress at her and tells her to get prepared for the purification, and then takes her to a pond with a couple of mermaids who help her take a bath. Back on the battlefield, Sujin and Shasa are inside the Guardian Giant, but they are still as big of noobs as they were outside it with no idea how to control it. They get bombed down by the centipedes, and F thinks how it's all just a big hunk of metal trash. Meanwhile, Sujin and Shasa are struggling with tanking all the attacks, And Yuki thinks back on the origin of the world and explains that Tomb Guardians and Tomb Raiders have fought over the goddess's tomb for over 1,000 years now. But originally both sides had the same powers. He then says that the Tomb Guardians exist to counter Tomb Raiders who want to spread destruction and gain the power of the goddess for themselves, and it's their duty to protect the tombs, the power, and the world. But over time, the numbers of Tomb Guardians have continued to only decline to the point that now there are less than a handful. Meanwhile, EU is done charging up his cannon and shoots another massive Kamehameha beam at the Guardian Giant and manages to take down one of its legs with it. The giant falls down on the ground, and Shasa worries about it, but Sujin looks as if he has a plan. He tells her to take out the long-range cannon first. The giant gets in position with its gun as Shasa takes charge of the aim and fire. Sujin scans the area and locates EU and F's location and tells her to take her time to aim and then go for them. With everything lined up, Shasa fires the shot, and it launches a strong beam of red energy at EU. He starts screaming like a baby and pees his pants, but then the energy beam gets reflected by a bunch of diamond cards and goes back to hit the giant instead. It turns out it was Thief's doing. She says that it's time to counterattack and activates the club's hypnosis card. With that, she throws a bunch of clubs in the air, and the spell takes over Shasa's mind, and she starts shooting at the clubs in the air mindlessly. She uses the ability so much that now they are left with only one shot, but Sujin stops her in time and binds her down. In the meantime, Foreign and the centipedes keep on attacking the giant, and some of the centipede robots even manage to get inside the robot and start damaging it from inside. Just then, F calls Foreign and tells her to take cover as EU is about to shoot the biggest fart out of his energy cannon that the world has ever seen. On the inside, Sujin turns around to ask for help from Yuki but sees him lying on the ground ready to breathe his last. He asks him what was happening, and Yuki says that he was just the real Yuki's data and now his time is coming to an end, so he should not be sad. With that said, he tells Sujin to protect Bango's tomb, and says that protecting it is the only way to save Ria as well, and then says that he is the last of Tomb Guardians before vanishing away into digital After Effects. Sujin feels extremely sad about losing his Gramps just when he had gained his memories of him back and starts screaming like an anime protagonist, and with that, his scarf starts shining as well, indicating that plot armor has been turned on. As he makes a plan, Sujin puts Twin and Star in charge of trolling Shasa's mind-controlled shooting frenzy. After that, he rides one of the centipedes out of the robot and rushes straight towards Foe from the sky. Fan tries to catch up to him to see who he was, but gets lured into the trap as he signals Twin and Star to make Shasa shoot at the clubs in front of him and takes Fawn down with it. After that, he places a few reflective diamond cards in the way and makes it so the energy beam reflects on them and hits Foe and takes her out as well. He then stands in the air on top of one of the reflective cards and makes EU question in his eyes. He says that he thought all the Tomb Guardians were gone, but he says that the last one is still alive. EU gets on top of his cannon and shoots it at Sujin, but he uses another Uno reverse card and makes the energy beam reflect back onto EU, taking him out as well. After that, he goes back to the giant, and Shasa says that he has passed the exam, and now he is the last Tomb Guardian. He says that he was able to do it only because she and the Twin Stars helped him, but she says that he did a great job and then says her goodbye as her purpose has finished. With that, she gives him a hug, and the whole stage alongside the giant and Shasa vanishes away into digital particles, and Sujin falls into a dark pit of digital void. But once she goes away, a crazy pink-haired gun lady appears behind him and says that she was wondering who she was going to face, but it turns out he is just a little baby. She says that he is not the last Tomb Guardian and that it is her right and shoots him down with her rifle. After getting shot by her, Sujin gets logged out of the game and teleports back to his bed. He checks his chest for the bullet wound, but it rapidly heals up and he's back to normal. He then gets a call on his kbay and picks it up to see who it's from. The guy on the other side of the line introduces himself as Yuan of the Totems clan and tells him that he will be waiting for him in Gravebuster before cutting the call. After that, Sujin receives an image from him showing Ria lying on the bed feeling totally vulnerable, and he starts worrying for her safety and well-being. With the release of Gravebusters, the whole world has now hopped onto this crazy trend. Being a gold digger and Mr. Moneybags is the new trending thing to be, and we see many new logins with over hundreds of thousands of yen to buy good gear and use it to get girls' attention. The next day, inside the game on stage 35 Golden Mines, we see Foy and her group meet up with their self-proclaimed leader Wild Wolf, Airing Lord, and call their team Gold Hunters. They are a group of players who specifically target noobs and hunt them down for all their golden items. They wait at a hotspot and keep an eye out for fresh prey, and eventually end up with a team of fat-looking ducklings running around in new gear. The fat guy cuts down a monster and makes some gold, and while everyone butters him up with praise, Foy walks close to them alongside Furin and says that they found a big treasure in the mines ahead. But the monsters attack them, and now she's afraid. She tries to use her plots and pluts to turn them into simps and makes them follow her to the mines. Once there, they ask where the monsters are, and she says that they must have run away seeing their fresh gear. But the monsters inside the mine attack them and stole over 3 million coins. Hearing this, the greedy simps immediately run towards the mine while Furin looks at their dumb asses in disdain. Once they are in place, EU uses his staff and traps them inside an energy cage. Just then, Mr. Kringler jumps down and says that he will now take everything they have. On the other hand, Sujin goes to the Academy library and reads up stuff on the new game. He wants to find more information on Taein and totems to get a lead on Rhea. Just then, Rancho meets him in the library and says that he has got just the right person for him while introducing his new big girlfriend. He says that despite her looks, she's a game freak and has participated in the closed beta as well. While Sujin wonders what happened to his poor friend's taste, from all the research he does, he finds out that the world of Gravebuster is ruled by a man named Dark Tiger who is the head of an organization called Precious. Precious is a massive group of rich boys, and they use their wealth to steal money and items from other players and use them to control the world. But recently, there are some groups rising up to fight against Precious, among them one called Totems, and it is ruled by this guy named Temujin. He's a terrifying man who is willing to do anything to get what he wants and is portrayed as a villain. Later that evening, Sujin looks at the picture of Rhea that Ewan sent him and thinks about the fact that he would do anything to get what he wants and starts getting crazy ideas and rolls on the bed like a giddy penguin. Meanwhile, Rhea wakes up in her room and is approached by Timon himself. He tells her that she will get everything she wants, and she just has to ask for it, but she can't leave from there. Back in the real world, Sujin goes to the girls' dormitory and pays Maki a visit. She says that no one knows where she went, and it feels like she has just disappeared. He looks at Rhea's laptop and resolves to bring her back and tells Maki that she will return soon. After that, he activates his console and calls Twinstar before telling her that he is ready and teleporting into the game with her. Meanwhile, Mr. Kringler and his team are having a party in the players' lobby after looting more than 1 million yen off of the newbies. He says that attacking newbies with a lot of cash is the best strategy, and Foy tells him to keep it down because he doesn't really sound cool while saying it out loud. Just then, Furin points towards an ugly-looking big guy sitting in rags on a table in front of them. EU says that he will go and see what was up with him. He later comes back with the information that the guy was the leader of Generals, which was like one of the backbone teams of Precious. His group got wiped out by a crazy lady who came out of nowhere and stripped them of all their belongings. They think that it's crazy and say that it must be some false information, and they must have had an internal conflict and a falling out. After that, they all head out for another hunt and trap yet another group of 3 newbies. Kringlord takes his sword out and stabs one of them with it. Suddenly, all their items and money start draining from their account and get transferred to Kringler's, and he tells them that once a player's account hits 0, they will be forcefully logged out, and their account will be killed. After stripping one of them down, he prepares to help himself to the others, but just then someone shoots at the cage from afar and breaks it down. The newbies run away, and Kringlert points his sword at the shooter and asks them what was up. It turns out she is the same crazy lady who shot Sujin the last time. As she says that she is there to hunt them down, Fan begins the fight by shooting a bunch of blasts towards her with her sword, and Foy and EU follow up with a combined reflection and energy beam attack. But the crazy lady dodges through all of it as if she's Batman and has the plot armor of an anime protagonist. She lands in front of Kringler, and the others surround her and tell her to drop her weapon. She looks at their dumb faces and says okay, and drops her gun to activate a gravity cage spell that traps them all. She then jumps out and points her gun towards Kringler and tells him to hand over the goods, and he starts crying like a baby and says that she should go and take the items from his group because they are much stronger and valuable. He lets her walk really close to him with his ass acting, and then stabs her with his sword as soon as she turns around. He calls her stupid while Foy, and the others call them trash for selling them out. The crazy lady says that is a sword that transfers the financial power from one person to another, and as far as she knows, it takes away from the player with less power and gives it to the richer person. Cringelord says yes and reveals that despite how he looks, he's worth over 50 million yen. But then he gets surprised as he looks at her account, and it turns out that she is one of the 5 players in the game with accounts over 100 million yen, the 5 billionaires. She looks back at him and says that she doesn't mind giving her gold to him if he can carry it, and then drops a massive brick of gold on him like Madara Uchiha and kills his character on the spot. After that, she jumps away and gets inside her carriage, and Foy asks her for her name. She says that her name is the Collector, and she's a woman who lives solely to kill tomb raiders like them. After that, she rides away while letting out a crazy laugh and drifts off into the distance as her name makes it to the upper ranks of the Precious, and they decide to take her down. Meanwhile, inside the totem's base, their member Ara presents Jan with a red sea bay that he had ordered, and he says that with this, he will be able to show Precious that they can be unpredictable as well. The chibi ninja girl, Koshiro, looks at it and asks him if he will give it to Ria and says that she is useless now that Yuki has died. But Silicon stops her and tells her to stand down. Timon hears her out and tells her that he knows that she doesn't know the real worth of Ria, but she will understand soon in the future. After that, he dresses Ria in a totally not safe for work outfit and presents her with a red sea bay and invites her as the new member of Totems. Meanwhile, we see Sujin flying over an arena on stage 10 called Twin Battlegate. He wants to meet the organizer of these battles called La Long because he's also in charge of the beginner's courses. While flying up, he notices a young boy named Takashi climbing up from the side of the arena.